Welcome back. We're going to finish this worksheet in 4.8. I didn't number these, so I'm just calling it the intro. And we were looking at e to the x. First we had this general power rule. And e to the x, what is the antiderivative? I'll put that in over here. The derivative of what function is e to the x? Itself. So the antiderivative of e to the x is e to the x, and we'll put plus c. Then we have 1 over x. Do you remember which function you take the derivative of? That gives you 1 over x. It's ln of x. That's right. So take the derivative, you can always check. And you get that. Now we always have to put a plus c here because it could be plus any constant will give you that antiderivative. And the derivative of that antiderivative is 1 over x. All right, now let's take a look at cosine. The derivative of what function is cosine? It's sine. The derivative of sine is cosine. Now the derivative of cosine is sine, but it's really negative, right? So the derivative of cosine is negative sine. So the antiderivative has to have a negative in here. And this should have plus c. Now let's check if I'm calling this my antiderivative. I can always take the derivative. And the derivative of that is cosine x, and the derivative of c is 0. So that's correct. So you should always end up with your little f of x up at the top, the function. Now let's take the derivative of this one, capital F prime of x. If I'm taking the derivative of that, it's negative, and the derivative of cosine is negative sine x plus 0 right there. So that gives me sine of x. So the signs are going to get confusing. You just got to get them straight. I always remember the derivative of sine is cosine, and the derivative of cosine is sine. So the antiderivative, you just have to always remember the plus minus. Now, what derivative of what function is secant squared x? The derivative of tangent x is secant squared x. Interesting. Plus c. And the derivative of what function is cosecant? Well, it's cotangent x, except for the derivative of cotangent x is negative, so we have to compensate there. And here we've got secant tangent. The derivative of secant x is secant tangent. And here, my antiderivative of this one, cosecant cotangent, this one is cosecant x plus c, and it's opposite sign. All right, so that is a lot that we have to work with, looking at antiderivatives. So the antiderivative of velocity. So which function s of t is the function where we take the derivative, and I'm just going to leave it like this, position. So the derivative of position function is velocity because the derivative of velocity is the position. So I'm going to write that over here. S prime of t equals v of t. And the derivative of what function is the acceleration? V of t, that's your velocity. So we know if we take the derivative of velocity, that gives you acceleration. All right, I'll be back with the other side of this page.